back to the Skullcast, where two brothers who happen to be Vikings fans love to talk about football. My name is Asher Whitmer, my brother Christopher Whitmer. Now, we are getting ready. We're in between week 12 and week 13, but last week, you probably haven't seen last week's video, I'm assuming, because at the time of this recording, we haven't even uploaded it. I was having issues with my internet, and then some pre-Thanksgiving work crunch. I just haven't had a chance to patch things together. But I do recommend checking it out, as we had a friend on as a guest, an Eagles fan. We talked some football and kind of what it's like to cheer for a team when they're doing better than expected, as that was kind of the story of the Eagles' last Super Bowl win. Christopher, as we dive into reviewing Week 12 here, what are some of your big takeaways, or what's on your mind this week?
I think the main thing that's on my mind, obviously, I'm always primarily thinking about the Vikings. Um, and I think that they are not disrespected necessarily in that people are speaking ill of them as much as people just aren't speaking of them. Um, and it doesn't really make sense, I don't think. I think that it's a very cool story. I think Sam Darnold is playing incredibly well. Um, and I think we'll get into this later, I think, but there are some very clear comparisons of the Vikings to other teams in the past who got a lot of like attention and excitement around them. Um, and given the fact that we just keep winning games, and we were very much in both of the games that we lost to really good teams, um, I think this is definitely a deep playoff contender.
Yeah, I know. I again, this is the Skullcast, so you're gonna get a lot of Vikings fodder. But I have this week. I've just been like, because our goal and desire is to highlight stories that national media isn't paying attention to, and so I always kind of take a glance over some other teams and just like, are we missing something here? And even we discussed it a little bit last week, but the Chargers are maybe kind of a team similar to the Vikings. A lot of people don't take them seriously.
Yeah,
What's different with them is they literally won't probably win their division, whereas the Vikings still have it, even though
yeah,
you have to get through the Lions, or someone's going to have to get to the Lions. But the like I'm just kind of fed up. Like, we're in week 11, and there are national news or sports news shows that don't even mention the Vikings. They'll talk about the Packers, they'll talk about the Texans, they'll talk about different teams that the Vikings have beaten.
yeah,
And the Vikings are literally one win away from matching their 5-game win streak again. And yeah, I was watching the Eagles Rams game on Sunday, and just first of all, just astounded by Saquon Barkley. Like,
yeah,
he clearly is, I would say, like, has to be in MVP conversations, if not front runner of the MVP. If something would happen to Barkley, I think that radically changes the
yeah,
Eagles. Now, one of the things that stood out to me about them was they have a much fiercer defensive line than I gave them credit for. I thought with some of the retirements that happened, both their lines, their O line and their defensive line, would be not as good. Unfortunately, Graham, is that his name? Is it Brendan Graham or Brandon
Brandon
Graham?
Graham.
Went down. He's
Yeah,
out for the year. But I was just wondering, like, so are the Eagles that much better than the Vikings? Or, and here's kind of what I come back to. In that 5-game winning streak, the Vikings had some things that that were sloppy. Like they had
Yeah.
issues that needed to be fixed. And those got exposed with really good teams like the Lions and the Rams. And I've seen adjustments from the Vikings both defensively and offensively. It would be like I just want another crack at the Lions and the Rams because I don't think they win second round. Maybe I respect the Lions enough like they might win the game at home. They're on a tear, they're on a good. But yeah, it just feels like people hardly mention the Vikings.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I don't really know why. If it wasn't for the Jacksonville game, I imagine we would be having some more um conversation. But I think it was like those two losses. The Rams game really was not great for us, even though like we could have stayed in that game and even right at the end potentially, made even a comeback. I don't know that we could have won the game, but we could have had an effort. Um, but then having the Colts game, which was like, all right, maybe we're coming back, and then the Jacksonville game where Sam Darnold threw three red zone interceptions, or we had three red zone turnovers or whatever. And then I think people were like, all right, yeah, this team is not what they were. But then we came out and we've had really two solid wins over the Titans and the Bears. And I mean, for all the disrespect we get, from mostly just from being ignored, like Kansas City, like let up a massive comeback to the Panthers. Like, well, they had an even bigger lead, and the Panthers of all teams almost came back and took that from the Chiefs.
Yeah, I think they were up at one point 28-14. I think the Vikings' biggest lead was 28-16 against Chicago.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and
and
then
yeah,
yeah, yeah. I mean and then also like you know 99 out of 100 times that onside kick's not going to work for the Bears. It's pretty. It's not a it's not a fluke. Like there was mistakes made, but it's very 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 rare for an onside kick like that to work. And so the reality is that 99 out of 100 times they're not going into overtime.
yeah, yeah. Excuse me. Um, the even the like the special teams as a whole is what dropped that game. You can't blame the defense. You can't blame the offense at all. The offense was great against the Bears. So, and the Bears supposedly have a really good defense as well. But you had that punt return that was returned for what, like 53 yards, and then the onside kick, all of that. The other thing that I came away realizing about Caleb, and I think that sack in overtime shows why he's obviously still a rookie. And again, I just maintain don't ever put such ridiculous expectations on these young rookies. But we saw Caleb Williams is a legit QB. Like he's really good. He pulled out some of the nicest passes I've seen probably by any quarterback all year.
Oh.
Um in that effort to come back.
Yeah.
But he just excuse me, got a text from my wife. He got derailed here. He needs he needs coaching and a system around him to do well. Like they definitely could do better. My hope is that Eberflus isn't fired before they play him again because I do think
Yeah.
a huge chunk of it comes back to Eberflus, which we've harped on some before. But what do you think of? So as of this morning, this is Wednesday morning before Thanksgiving.
So,
The Vikings have signed Daniel Jones to the practice squad. What do you think of that move?
I think it's telling. I think, um, it sounds like some of the options, like, I don't think any of us really expected Sam Darnold to be back in 2025. I think if you've been paying attention to the Vikings at like a local level, you know that that was pretty unlikely. Um, and so having a veteran QB come in for 2025 to back up our first year quarterback, he won't be a rookie at the time, but it'll be his first year playing, makes a lot of sense. And I, so that's intriguing. Like it kind of sounds like that's what people are thinking maybe is going to happen. Um, but I mean, Vikings is one of a handful of teams that knows most recently what it is like to try to go through a season without good quarterbacking. And so it also seems like they're just shoring up like on the verge of what could be like a deep playoff run, having some reliable backups such as Daniel Jones could be really helpful. Like I don't think you're gonna make a deep playoff run with Nick Mullins as good as he is in a pinch, like when he's come in for a few snaps. Um, I think also it's intriguing from Daniel Jones's perspective is like there are several teams I'm sure that he could have signed with and started again this year, but he chose to sign to the practice squad of the Vikings, which I think if I understand the rules right, he could sign to a team from the practice Vikings practice squad. So it's not like he's under exclusive contract to the Vikings, unless they
Yeah,
would activate him to the 53-man roster. But so so it seems like the best of both worlds, where the Vikings are doing him a favor, where he can come. What I was going to say is, it seems telling that he chose to come to an organization where, like, Josh Dobbs, of all people, has thrived, where Sam Darnold has been rehabilitated, where Kirk Cousins was even starting to do better. Um, and it seems pretty clear that at least quarterbacks really, really highly respect what Kevin O'Connell is building in Minnesota and are willing to come here to just sit under that, even if it's for a short time, which I think is cool.
yeah,
That's exciting as a fan, to
yeah,
watch that happen.
yeah. I know it's really again. I genuinely think Kevin O'Connell deserves Coach of the Year.
Yeah,
I don't know that he'd even have to do a whole lot more. Like he could lose to the Packers, he could lose to the Lions, and they'd go 12-5 or whatever. And I still think he deserves Coach of the Year just with what he's done. Um, did you see that article? I saw it floating around. I didn't actually read it, but something. Well, I didn't read the whole thing. I read enough to see that JJ McCarthy said that at the combine, all the QBs wanted to go to Minnesota or wanted to go with Kevin O'Connell,
I heard
which
that somewhere at some point.
I don't know how much, that's coming from
Yeah,
JJ. So he could
right.
be bragging up his new coach as well. But that, I mean, he's legit. Like
Yeah,
every young QB he goes up against, there's always some photo or video of him going and talking to them and encouraging them afterward.
yeah,
And I I look at that and think like, first of all, I tend to think just as a Christian, O'Connell is embodying the type of excellence that I think we ought to bring to the marketplace.
Yeah,
Like he is he's clearly succeeding at developing quarterbacks.
yeah,
Can the Vikings win a playoff game? Will the Vikings win Super Bowl? Like sure, all of that is in question, but he does really really well with quarterbacks. I think he's also proven to do really well at building a good culture and a good franchise. Just learning his mistake of choosing defensive coordinator his first year and then going a different route, and from what I understand, pretty much letting Flores have autonomy with the defense, like owning that
yeah,
defense
yeah,
himself. And um so I those are the types of things that I think about, but it's also from a franchise standpoint, how valuable could that be to the team down the road if you're building relationships with other QBs around the league to the degree where like people want to come play for you and they're
yeah,
they're willing to come join the practice squad and just even be in the QB room, be in the presence and learn
yeah.
what they can from.
That's awesome.
Um so here's the thing. Let's just dive into this a little bit now. Um Sam Darnold is 11 games in. He's 9-2. He's never won 9 games before. Before he had won 7 as his most. But he has 2,717 passing yards, which he's passed for over 3,000 yards before, back in 2019. His completion percentage is 67.6, which is higher than it's ever been before. He's passed for 21 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He has a QB rating of 101.7, and he has 202 rushing yards on the year as well. So that's 29-19 for total yards. Jared Goff, who many have had in MVP conversations. And I understand, I think Sam Darnold floated up there within the first 3 weeks when he was leading the league in touchdowns. But Goff has definitely been in MVP conversations a lot longer. And he has a completion percent. Well, the completion percentage is what has him up. He's 72.9. So that's a career high. He's never even had a 67.6, which is what Sam Darnold has in terms of completion percentage. But he has, in terms of total yardage, he has 2,924 total yards. He's only thrown for 20 touchdowns. Darnold has 21. And he has one less interception than Darnold, 9. His QB rating is 109.9, but his QBR is 57.7. Sam Darnold's QBR is 59.4. So this is what has my grill a little agitated right now. Is just why does Sam Darnold not what more does he have to do? Like he's played 2/3 of the season already, and he's putting up career numbers, but also comparable numbers. I was listening to I think it was Woody, I forget his last name, but one of the guys on ESPN, and they were talking about whether or not the Vikings are legit contenders. And they all pointed to Darnold as like, yeah, but we have 6 years of data points on Darnold. And the question is, when's this clock going to strike midnight? And I just, and then it also kind of fired me up being on Twitter a little bit. Actually, I think this may have been on YouTube. I don't remember what video it was underneath, but just seeing comments from Lions fans and even Packers fans who are like talking as though the Vikings are frauds and Sam Darnold's going to turn into a pumpkin, and I'm just like I don't. So for Packers fans, I kind of think they're so used to owning the NFC North. There's maybe a little bit of a insecurity there. They're not like it's sort of like welcome to the rest of us. They've had even though they've done very little in the playoffs over the last 30 years. Um, they have owned the NFC North, and other than I guess my gripe with Packers is other than the playoff game against the Cowboys last year, like what game have they won where they walked in the underdog and people just didn't think they'd do it and they just continued to time and again disprove people? Because I'm
Yeah,
like, Vikings walked into Lambeau, beat you soundly. Yes, you guys almost came back, but that game was never really in question. Like, just give some respect. Like, talk smack, uh, taunt us, like try to, but to somehow come off as though the Vikings are frauds or they're not legit. Like, hey, so far they've done stuff to show they are legit, and maybe even more than you all. When it comes to Lions fans, I'm a little bit like, dude, everybody loves the Lions redemption story. The NFL is begging for a Lions Chiefs Super Bowl. Like
yeah,
everybody wants that. Every commentator, every like and it's a really cool story, but I guess I'm confused like why not respect the redemption story that is Sam Darnold? Like why is that not considered a legit redemption story worth celebrating as well?
yeah,
What are yeah,
yeah. I mean, Jared Goff was Sam Darnold. Like they traded him. Like the Rams traded him to the Lions for Matthew Stafford, sent picks, and paid his salary. Like it was
yeah.
basically a freebie that they threw in and was like, here, have this quarterback, this failed quarterback as well. Um, I think people forget just how quote unquote washed up Jared Goff was. And, and yeah, like there's also just such hubris in Lions fans, like after 50 years of being a bottom two franchise to now be like that. What the Lions organization themselves have been releasing these like super like trash talky videos, making fun of their opponents, calling them losers and stuff like that. I'm just like, wow, I this is this is only setting yourself like that's a lot of confidence and it's great to have confidence, but like you're setting yourself up for so much humiliation if you don't follow through. Like if you don't win the Super Bowl, there's going to be so many memes and jokes and things in response. Um,
Espe- yeah. Especially when they have played 4 games against current playoff teams. Like if the playoffs ended
yeah,
today, they're in. They're in. They lost one of those games, and 2 other of those games, the Vikings and the Texans, they were very close to losing. Like it,
yeah,
they were the Texans was a lost game. That's really kind of almost on the Texans for blowing that, but the one with the Vikings
yeah,
was toe to toe, tit for tat. It could have gone either way.
yeah,
But yeah, it's like you're doing great, and I think that's part of it too. Minnesota lays an egg against the Jaguars. I look at the offensive metrics. They've been better, more efficient. They've been dominant. It's like I I don't know, like, and surely the Lions are not laying all their cards on the table, but like, what's the point of running the table? What's the point of a 50 burger on Jacksonville other than just that kind of we are here and we're to own everybody, but you're not doing it to playoff teams. Like you're not
yeah,
that dominant or that scary to playoff teams. Like I'd rather see that. If I was a Lions fan or as a Vikings fan, I'm like, I'm excited about the fact that they dominated the Texans. They dominated the 49ers back before they were as slaughtered with injuries as they are now. They
Yeah.
played tit for tat with
Yeah.
the Lions. I think it's a cool story, and they should have lots of confidence. But I guess I don't quite understand why blowing out bad teams has all the hype that it does with the Lions.
Yeah, when the Cowboys did it, they just said they were padding their stats. Whereas when the Lions do it, it's a cool story, I guess. But um, I think yeah, I think a lot of it is just the story. Like the Lions have been so terrible so consistently for so long, whereas the Vikings have been mediocre, and so you know it's not that significant, if they make it to the NFC Championship because we've been there, 3 times in the last 20 years. Um,
Yeah,
whereas they,
yeah,
you know,
I think
go
you're
ahead.
right. I think it is. Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the story arc of the franchise as a whole. Um, and it's just like this is such a fun spot to be as a Vikings fan because it's
Yeah,
like we called that they were going to win 10 games at the end of the season.
yeah,
Um, they're very like they should be able to sneak out one more win here,
yeah,
and so they could do the rest. They could totally fold and only win 7 games, maybe even miss the playoffs or whatever. I don't know that would for sure make you miss the playoffs, but
yeah,
and the season would still be like, hey, that's what we thought we would do this year.
yeah,
But we're en route, meaning like we still have a grasp at the number one seed of the conference, and
right, right.
that's just fun. It's like we have nothing to prove. Like if we happen to get that one seed, it's just whatever. Whereas it's really kind of fun just sitting back and like letting the Lions have their day because if they don't show up in the Super Bowl, their season's a failure. Like the expectations for them are Super Bowl or bust this year
Yeah,
and next year. Maybe not even next year, but I would assume like obviously they're wanting to be dominant for years to come. But Jared Goff isn't a young chicken either, spring
yeah,
chicken.
yeah. I mean, there's always a chance that they become the Bengals, where they get hot. You go to the Super Bowl on a Chiefs off year, and then haven't really been back. So maybe went to the AFC Championship.
Yeah. They're so like the other thing that always just kind of irks me is the well, so I was listening. Oh, it was somebody, it was CBS or something talking about the Daniel Jones signing this morning, and the people who were talking about it were like, "Yeah, this is a good move. The Vikings started hot, but then Sam Darnold hasn't been so well the last couple of weeks," and I'm just like, "Good grief, you guys say that you don't watch Vikings games without telling me you don't
Yeah,
watch Vikings games." Because the last 2 weeks Darnold has been very good. But on the season, the Vikings have had the third toughest schedule behind the Steelers, who are second, and then the Patriots have had the toughest schedule as far as strength of schedule. So the fact that they are 9-2, Detroit is middle. I think they're 18th as far as the 18th easiest. So what would that put them?
if what?
Uh,
Sorry, say that again.
I think so. They would. The Detroit has had the 18th easiest schedule on the year, so that
Oh,
would be the 14th toughest schedule.
yeah,
Um, yeah. So all that to say, just kind of bringing a full circle. Like the Vikings, the Vikings are legit. You can not like them. You can like, hey, if we go to the NFC, if we go to the divisional round, like if we, I guess if we win the division, then we'll show up in the divisional
Yeah,
round. But if we're a wild card and we go to the divisional round, like Vikings fans are going to be in their glory, and that's the thing that I think even some Vikings fans last week I was kind of in the dark hole that is negativity of Vikings fans. I didn't even realize there was such an awful community of people. They were just like people calling for KOC to be fired. He's
oh
a
geez,
horrible play caller. It's just like what the world. Like I don't know if they if all they do is turn. Yeah, but even if you're watching games, like they've been very dominant this year. Um, Even like the Vikings have proven, and Sunday was another game like this. We got traumatized under Ed Donatel,
yeah,
whereas like they'd have this 2 point lead, but it's just like constant anxiety and look at that. What do you know? They come right back and
yeah,
um and lose. Or the thing that was really big that year was we would be down, the Vikings would be down and then come back in the fourth quarter and win. I think what did they have 10 fourth quarter comebacks that year?
yeah, something like that, 10 or 11, yeah,
Um that like what stood out to me this year, and we saw this again on Sunday, is the Vikings have had a few games where they were up and they were owning the game the whole time along,
yeah,
and then the momentum swings and the other team is marching right back. And so far, the Vikings have squashed all of those.
yeah,
So the it happened with the Packers and the Bears were the most distinct, but then the I would say the Niners and the Jets had a little bit of that feel to it, and even the Colts game a little bit had they were able to throw up a touchdown or a field goal, I forget what it was there, and gain some positive points. And so just the fact that the Vikings have owned their games and then they finish out, like they don't give up leads. Have they given up a fourth quarter? Like, is the Detroit game considered a fourth quarter comeback? It was
I'm
kind
not
of back
sure.
and forth through the fourth quarter.
You saying which one was the Lions?
Detroit, like it was, yeah, against the Lions. Like, is that considered? Did the Lions get credited with a fourth quarter comeback on that game?
Um, I don't know that that would be considered a fourth quarter comeback.
Because they were back and forth the whole second half. Excuse me. Anyways,
So they went into the fourth quarter 28-17 Detroit Lions. And then, so if anything, the Vikings were making the comeback. And then
yeah,
they got that three.
they returned a fumble for a touchdown, and then
Yeah.
I forget what all it was, but yeah. So yeah, and
Oh,
just
I
for the
forgot
Packers
that
fans, like,
sorry.
oh, I was
I
just gonna say,
forgot.
like, Jordan Love doesn't even show up on statistical leaders
Yeah.
of QB.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
Oh, I forgot that they had a failed 2 point uh from that um fumble return for a
The Vikings.
touchdown. Yeah, against the Lions. If they would
Oh,
have had that 2 point, it would have been tie game 31-31.
yeah, that's crazy. But then they also didn't Naylor drop a pass in the end zone in that game.
Yeah, there there was also like a I think like a really bad call that I forget exactly the time. I know there were several things. It was like Naylor dropped a pass, they failed the 2 point. There was a there was a bad call. There was also just like I think Sam Darnold. What was it? They could have gotten into field goal range to take back the lead right at the end, but he didn't make a completion or something, and so time just kind of ran out. So it's like it literally was we just ran out of time. We very much were in the game up until the end, and then the clock ran out.
Yeah. Did Naylor drop the 2 point conversion, or was that a separate
Oh,
touchdown? I can't
could be.
remember.
I'm not
But
remembering that. I'm just kind of looking over a score summary, so I don't remember
oh, okay,
the play by
yeah.
play. But I think I was at work
I
that
don't
day.
remember what it. Yeah, yeah. Well, that do you feel like you blew your steam? Or do you have more to say on that?
No, I think I'm good.
Should we review our picks from last week and
Yeah, let's do it.
what we picked for this week? Okay, going back to last week. Last week was a bad week for us. I thought you were gonna gain some ground on me, but we actually had the same record on the week. We missed it on the Steelers. Are you at all concerned about the Steelers?
Am I?
Yeah.
No, I'm not concerned.
I don't people have been kind of negative on them since blowing that, but Wilson actually played pretty good in that game.
Yeah, it was a
And it was a snow
snowball
game.
game.
Yeah. I'm not sure why people are so negative
Yeah,
on that.
yeah.
I'm not concerned about them either.
But
It's a
also, yeah, we don't have to go back into it. I think that there is some strong reasons why, like Pittsburgh. Yeah, anyways, there's some comparisons between the Steelers and the Vikings, but Pittsburgh gets all the love. Anyways,
oh yeah.
we've
Yeah.
passed that.
um the other, probably the most surprising games of the week were the Titans upsetting the
Yeah,
Texans and the Cowboys upsetting Commanders. Are you concerned about
yeah.
Texans and Commanders at all?
Am I concerned? Concerned
Yeah.
about the Commanders. Um, and I don't know what to think about the Texans. They're going to go to the playoffs because the division is terrible. Um, yeah, I guess I'm probably concerned about them both. I think the Commanders could very well miss the playoffs. JD Daniels seems like he's injured. And the Texans,
Hmm.
I think they missed I think maybe they've gotten some of their players back, but like Stephon Diggs is out for the year. Um, yeah, there's just like the vibes are just
Yeah.
off in Houston.
So I had this hunch about the Eagles that they had a weak pass defense.
They had a
The
what?
the hunch is a weak passing defense. The
Oh,
hunch was
yeah,
going into the season, like as Vic Fangio as their defensive coordinator, I thought their passing defense would be weak. And then they've actually had one of the better passing defenses, but they haven't played
excuse
very
me.
good passing offenses throughout the season necessarily. Well, after the game against the Rams, I think it's legit. They've now played the Bengals and the Rams and held them both below 20 points. So,
Yeah,
do you think what is your takeaway of the Eagles? Like I actually personally, and it's largely because the Vikings haven't played them, but I'm more intimidated by the Eagles than I am the Lions.
yeah, I think so. I think that's accurate. Um, I I feel like the way the Eagles are playing right now, that they would they they would be more intimidating to me than the Lions. I think Saquon Barkley is insane. Um, and I feel like this could be the difference between like the master and the pupil with Vic Fangio and Donatel is that like maybe he just adjusted his scheme better, whereas Donatel was maybe too much of an adherent, that he just
Yeah.
felt like he just never adjusted. He never learned from his mistakes. Um, or maybe he just didn't have the right personnel. I don't know. But um, whereas it seems like the Eagles have seriously adjusted and
Yeah.
are playing, their defense is playing a lot better.
Yeah. After talking with Jordan last week, I've been thinking about that too, and then watching the game, he mentioned how they seem to have adjusted out of, I forget if it was out of the bye week, or just after the first few games. The thing I noticed watching them was that scheme works if you have a beast of a defensive line. If your
Yeah,
pass rush,
yeah,
it can just blow people over, then the scheme works. Because then
yeah,
you sped up the quarterback, he has to make faster throws, and
yeah.
your zone defense can like it's more likely
Having,
that the throws aren't going to be as accurate. Whereas I don't know when Donatel was with the Vikings, I don't know that we had that beastly of a defensive front.
I mean, we certainly didn't have the depth. We had Daniil Hunter, but um,
But
but
the
I
Eagles
don't
had
remember.
four. They're
Yeah,
rushing four guys every play.
yeah, yeah. The- I mean, with what I just said, thinking about it that way, there is a part of me that feels like the Vikings could survive against the Eagles though, because we have such great receivers, a receiving core, combined with Sam Darnold being an incredible thrower under pressure, like under the blitz.
Yeah.
Um, when Sam Darnold is blitz, his passer rating goes up. When he has
It's
time, it
true.
goes down. And so with like if you're leaving Jefferson and Addison and Hawkinson exposed out there, and Sam Darnold is more accurate, then we might be able to survive a game against the postseason game against the Eagles. But
And Sam
or we
Darnold
could
is
just
more
implode.
mobile. Yeah. Sam Darnold is more mobile than the than Matthew Stafford. Like Stafford's very decisive and very fast
Yeah,
and
yeah.
very accurate, but he's not as mobile. I genuinely think a huge part of that game though had to do with how the Rams were rushing Hurts. They they go wide and get deep, and Hurts always
Oh,
escapes up the wings when you go
yeah,
wide and get deep. There were three times, for sure two. I'm thinking three times where he converted third and long because of that. And if they would have rushed more narrowly, pushing him back or forcing him to run out wide, um, it it wouldn't have been it would have been a different story. Like Hurts is not he's not the Patrick Mahomes quite running under pressure. He just has an ability to escape well. And the way their
yeah,
scheme the way their offensive scheme is set up, there's a lot of green left open if your pass rush goes deep on him. There's a lot of green space. You don't have just a ton of action at the line of scrimmage. Anyways, that was way more attention on the Eagles than I wanted to give. I have no mercy for Eagles.
yeah.
Um, and then what did you think of the Harbaugh Bowl?
The what? Oh, the Harville. Um, I fell asleep around halftime.
It. I
Uh,
wish if
go ahead.
J.K. Dobbins could have stayed in the whole game, I think it would have been a closer game,
Yeah.
more competitive. Did you hear about the allegation that came out?
Yes, I did. I think I know what you're talking about. That.
Oh, that the dad of the Ravens coach slept with the mom of the Chargers coach. Sorry, I just find that kind of funny. For those of you that don't know, if you're watching this, you know. If you don't know, you can drop a comment. Okay, week 13. We already put our picks in here just to speed this process up a little bit, but we're both picking the Lions over the Bears. Christopher, you had picked the Cowboys. I'm picking the Giants. Partly because I hear that possibly Drew Lock is going to go, and partly
Well,
because they're back in AT&T Stadium.
AT&T, that's where the Cowboys play. Oh, I see what. Yes,
Yeah, Cowboys
that's
are at
true.
home. They have yet to win at home
Yeah,
this year.
it's
Um,
embarrassing.
what's
Usually
your
pretty good.
rationale of picking the Dolphins over the Packers?
Um, I mean, Tua has just been incredible since he's gotten back. Um, and also
Yeah.
I want I want my rooting interest to be aligned with my desires.
Yeah. No, I agree. Tua, they have lost some close games. Like they lost by 1 point to the Bills, I think. Who else did they play? The Texans, I think they lost by
Yeah, maybe.
1 point. So I think they very well could get it. But I also um I don't know. I think the Packers. Well, I think the Packers lose two more. Two more. I think the Packers probably go 12-5. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think those losses are going to be to Minnesota and to the Lions. So maybe they lose this one as well.
You think?
We both pick.
Yeah.
Go for it. What were you gonna say?
Go ahead. No, I was processing. Go ahead.
We both pick Chiefs, Vikings, Chargers over the Falcons. Who do you think's going to win the NFC South?
NFC South.
Yeah,
Um. Oh,
it looks like you think Buccaneers
I mean,
because you have the Falcons losing and the Bucks winning.
I don't know. That's it'll probably end up being the Falcons just
You
because
think so?
their team hasn't fallen apart from injuries. But I mean, I think the Bucks
Yeah,
do
but
have
they've
Mike Evans
fallen
back, right?
apart. What's that?
Oh, I said I think the Buccaneers do have Mike Evans back. What were we saying they've
Yeah.
fallen apart? What way?
Well, they've laid eggs the last two games, haven't they?
Yeah, it's true.
I don't think they've done much. But yeah, they're coming off the bye. So, but yeah, I agree. I think Chargers beat them. Steelers, we have Steelers over Bengals, Texans over Jaguars. You're picking Patriots over Colts. Why is that? I almost did that as well, but I don't
So,
really
did
have a
you
good
ask me a
explanation
question
for
about that?
why. Yeah, why'd you pick Patriots over Colts?
My, I think, I think they're gonna they they played the Dolphins last week, right? They lost pretty miserably, I think. Um, and so I'm inclined to think that they're gonna bounce back pretty hard. But in the Colts, I don't necessarily think the Colts are great. The Colts aren't terrible, but um, I don't know.
The Colts
We'll
are the
see. We'll see.
manifestation of mediocre this year.
Yeah, yeah.
You never know when they're going to win. Um, moving on. Where are we at? I was looking something up. We both picked Seahawks, Commanders, Rams, Bucks. You're picking Eagles. I'm picking Ravens.
What's that?
You're probably right, but I said you're picking Eagles. I'm picking Ravens.
Ah, yeah, that's a pretty. It could go either way. I have no idea.
I think so. The Ravens. I think the Ravens showed adjustment in their defense the other night against the Chargers. I could be wrong, but if their defense is half of what it was last year, like they're I think their offense is quite a bit better than the Eagles, just because Lamar is a better quarterback, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on that. Like the Eagles probably have the better wide receiver duo, and Saquon's been a beast.
Yeah,
But I would put Lamar in an elite QB
yeah,
category. I don't know that I have Hurts there,
yeah,
even though I do
yeah.
think he gets underrated at times. And then the Bills over 49ers. I'm Broncos over Browns. The Niners, I think they probably missed the playoffs
Yeah,
with everything that
they're
they have going.
they're in a pretty miserable spot.
Well, that is all that we have for heading into week 13. What are you doing for Thanksgiving? Are you watching? I just lost my partner. Not sure what happened. See if he hops back on here. There you are.
Hey, sorry about that. I accidentally wait.
You're sideways. I don't know if that's.
Why is it not? Uh, well, sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, well, that wraps up our review of week 12 and heading into week 13. Do you have plans of what are you doing for Thanksgiving? Are you going to be watching football or
We are
setting
going
all
to
that aside?
we're
And
selling Christmas place in South Philly. What's that?
are you going to be watching football or are you setting all that aside, just hanging out with?
Probably mostly hanging out with family. I know that the boys are excited to play the farming game that they recently got. So we're gonna play a
Oh
bunch of
yeah,
farming games.
there you go.
Um, I imagine we probably won't watch the Cowboys versus the Giants. Um, Depending on how the Lions versus Bears game goes, that could be interesting. Um, but if we watch one, I imagine it end up being the Packers game.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it'll be a fun weekend. We'll see
Yeah,
how things go. I mean, hey, maybe Vikings are tied for first after this weekend, huh?
Bears beat the
It could
Lions.
happen.
Not outside the
Hey,
realm of possibility.
the moment the Vikings beat the Niners, expectations for this season just got completely upended. Anything could happen.
Yep.
All right. Well, we will talk to you next week.
All right. See ya.